Welcome to Master the Game. I am Juce, and I am so excited because today I am talking about my thoughts on Pathfinder Second Edition. So let's get started. So Pathfinder Second Edition is a game that I was hesitant to get into. The problem I always had with First Edition Pathfinder is I always had to look up so many different rules, and I felt like I couldn't get a firm handle on running the game. I never felt like I was actually in control of anything and didn't know enough. And I bought hundreds of dollars of books. I ran it for a few different groups. I played in a few different groups. I just never quite grasped all the rules. And rules are important to me. Being able to play a game how it's intended for the most part is a very important aspect of it. Pathfinder Second Edition is a really streamlined game. It's a little bit like First Edition, however, they've made a lot of the rules simpler to remember. A lot of things are just streamlined and just simpler as a whole. The situational modifiers, things like that, you don't have to remember a whole bunch of situational things the way you did in First Edition. Now, there are still more situational things than other popular fantasy games out there. But I don't feel like it's too much for me or even a newer player coming to this game. Now, in the playtest phase, I heard a lot of people saying, oh, they're trying to be like that other game, or, oh, it's basically just First Edition, with all the options taken out. Like, I've heard a lot of negative things, and it did deter me from this. But I can tell you, after diving into this and spending 20 plus hours in this system, reading and going over making characters and things like that, this game is nothing like what I heard during playtest. Now, that doesn't mean that what was happening in playtest is different than what came out in here, but a lot of the negative things that I had heard aren't there. It's not, D&D 5e. It's not First Edition Pathfinder. It is its own thing, and there's some brilliant things in this game. Character creation in Pathfinder Second Edition, they call it the ABCs, right? You have ancestries, backgrounds, and classes. Now, the ancestries are really well done in this edition. The thing that stands out is how simple it is to build a character and how meaningful your choices are. I know that's a terrible, dirty word among immersive role players, the whole character build. But this game offers so much personality with each choice. There's flavor in every single thing. There's, ways to role play almost every single choice in this game. And that's what's really cool. Like, just looking at the Goblin, which is one of the new core ancestries, because they're called ancestries instead of races now, but it's one of the new core ancestries. It has so much flavor, each choice you're taking. You have one, for example, that allows you to drink things that would normally hurt you or harm you. But because you're I think it's like a iron gut goblin, it sits okay. So you can test potions and things like that to see what they are ahead of time. It's a really cool, flavorful thing. And I could totally see how you would take that and role play it in the game, like whether you're in a tavern, whether it's eating nasty stuff, eating garbage. Like, that's fun. It's cool. It can add some memorable stuff at your table, and that's not just mechanical, that's flavor. Part of character creation in the past for other fantasy games has always been rolling dice or point buy or stat array. And you can still do this if you do some of the rules from the Gamemastery guide, but this one, the way it's intended is when you choose an ancestry, you get a couple options from that. You can, put it into a primary attribute and a free attribute. You get 4 free attributes also on top of those. You also get 2 from background. You get 2 from your class. You might get a flaw from your ancestry, So all these things lead up to what your attributes are going to be. So, for example, if you're, say, a dwarf, well, you're going to get a bump to Constitution. So that you start out at 10, but that's going to make it a 12, right? You might take a background that gives you another bump to Constitution. Now it's a 14. You might then get another attribute bump to Constitution from your class. Now it's at 16. And then you can take one of the 4 free choices into, say, Constitution if you wanted it to hit 18. So you do kind of make these choices that build these things out, but it makes so much more sense than just randomly rolling it. Now, you can choose to, take a flaw and get another attribute bump somewhere, but it can't be in one that's already from, like that you've already taken in that section. So you shouldn't be able to hit 20, for example, in any attribute at first level. Now, again, some of the cool stuff about the ancestries is you might choose goblin, but then you might choose a goblin that's from a specific region, and say it's from like a really cold area, really hot area. It's going to give you perks related to that as well. So that would be your heritage. When you take your heritage, again, you're going to get some cool things associated with it. And it also opens up certain feats, right? So you get a feat, an ancestry feat, and, at first level, and you'll get one later. And, as you level up, you can choose different feats based on your class, your ancestry, as long as you meet the prerequisites. Now, these are the ways you really round out your character in this game. And the really cool thing about it is that, you can come up with like a variety of things your character can do, or you can really specialize. But unlike the previous edition where you could stack feats and stuff, it doesn't seem like it's as easy to stack feats in second edition. You can still do it, but there's not a lot of overlapping feats. Usually if it overlaps, it kind of replaces the other one. And I think that's the way to go. It really feels like they put a lot of thought into the balance of some of these things so that you didn't get too crazy OP, especially early on in the game. So in this game, you're going to have 6 primary ancestries to choose from. Okay, and that would be the dwarf, the elf, the gnome, the goblin, the halfling, and human. But under human is also where you get a couple sub-options, such as a half-orc or a half-elf. That is, again, it's a really cool way to build out your character. Obviously, you take a human, but then under your heritage, you're going to take one of those. Humans are going to get 2 free ability boosts and no flaws, whereas all the other ancestries are going to take at least 1 flaw, 2 specific ability boosts, and 1 free ability boost. So again, that's kind of what sets those apart. Obviously, you can build almost any character without a flaw from a human, or you can go with the more specified type of ancestry towards a certain path, or just play against type, which is personally one of my favorite things to do. And the amount of backgrounds in this edition is crazy. You get a little bit of flavor text, you get a little feat from it, usually a general, like a skill feat. It's not like the most overpowered thing, but it is a very flavorful thing towards the background, as well as the ability boosts. Backgrounds are really cool in Pathfinder Second Edition, and there's a ton of them to choose from. There are 12 classes in Pathfinder Second Edition. You got the alchemist, you got the champion rather than a paladin, you got a fighter, you got a druid, you got a bard, you got a cleric, you've got a sorcerer, you've got a monk, a ranger, a rogue, a wizard, and I believe that's all of them. Oh, and a barbarian if I didn't say that. Now, when I first got this book, the thing that stood out to me was how big it is. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, it is 600 pages. That's massive. How can you learn everything in there? Don't worry. It's actually not that bad. Some of it's, Galarian world info. Some of it's just how to play a role-playing game. It's not a ton of rules specifically. There are, feats and spells and things like that take up a lot of the pages. There's ways to run it and, things like that. But ultimately, the rules of the game are not that hard to remember. There's some really cool things in there. Now, the one thing that really stands out if you're looking to get into this game compared to others is the 3-action economy. It's actually a simplified version of what other games do, in the sense that you don't have to keep track of, well, is this a free action? Is this a movement action? Is this a bonus? Is this a, reaction? This, that. Like, that's really simplified down. And so now in the 3-action economy, you can do things like move, attack, engage with an object, and there's a list of things you can do. And some skills allow you to do things like disarm a trap might be 2 actions, for example, of the 3, because it takes a little bit more than a couple seconds to do that. So there's all that. The only thing you really need to remember outside of that is really the reaction, right? So not everybody gets reactions. For example, in the past, everybody could do an attack of opportunity. Well, not anymore. Now, there are some people who get things like a shield block or an attack of opportunity or a counterattack. Some of this stuff comes from specific feats. And one of my favorite feats in here is a class feat for the fighter, and it's turning flanking against the enemy. So in other words, when you're flanked, you can do a reaction to basically attack one of them, which is really cool. So there's a lot of cool things like that. And some of the spells take full advantage of the 3-action economy, where it might take 2 or 3 actions to cast a spell. Some spells might take 1. Some spells give you options, like the healing spell. You can do it as a 1-action touch spell, or you could do it as an area of effect spell using up all 3 actions and healing everybody within this area. So that's really cool as well. In fact, that's something that I wish they did more of with a lot of the spells in here. And so I hope to see, as more books come out in the future, that spells are going to have a lot more versatility like that, because that is a really cool thing that I don't think they took full advantage of in the core book. Now, in this edition, multiclassing is really just archetypes. In fact, all the archetypes in the core book are just other classes. And so if you want to say multiclass, rather than taking your class feat at, say, 4th level or whatever, you're going to then take the specific feat for another class in the archetypes section. And then you also get the associated abilities with that class. I think this is how archetypes are going to be in future books as well. I'm not real up on it. I haven't done a lot with archetypes. Even in the past, I didn't. But I'm really interested in diving more into that, because it sounds like it's a really easy way to multiclass without giving up who your character is, right? Like if you're a wizard and say you hit that 4th or 5th level or whatever, rather than multiclassing and giving up your wizard stuff that you would normally get at that level, all you're giving up is a feat. And so now you still get those new spells. You still get all the stuff that you would get except for that feat. So you're not weakening your character by multiclassing. In fact, you might be buffing your character far more than weakening it, right? The only thing you're missing out on is that specific class feat that you possibly would have taken there. So archetypes are a really cool way to round out a character. If you've got only a couple people in your party, archetypes are a good way to do that. And the Gamemastery Guide even has some other ways of multiclassing if you want to try some different things with that. Some really cool things too if you have only a couple people in your gaming group and you need to round out a party. There's some really cool stuff in the Gamemastery Guide for that. Both the core rulebook and the Gamemastery Guide and the Bestiary, I will have links to down below if you are interested in purchasing them. So when it comes to Pathfinder, the thing that people are always saying is, wow, there's so many options, and that's true. But a lot of people associate that with crunch, and it's difficult, and it's overwhelming. But the thing that I like about it is that if you have a concept, right, say you want to be a fighter that specializes with the shield, you can really focus in on that, taking feats that are associated with that. There's no there's no sub types of fighters that then give you these 3-4 things that you're going to get as you level no matter what. Now you still get to pick what you want to do every single time. Every level, there's choices rather than being stuck with, now you get this ability no matter what, and now you get this ability no matter what. I love the fact that you get choices to change how your character evolves. The thing about that makes it so great is that you might have a large group, say 6-7 players, and 2 people are both playing a dwarven fighter. And I'm using fighter because that's just an easy example, but you have 2 people playing a dwarven fighter. One of them really specializes in that shield and taking damage and blocking and things like that. The other fighter, while he might have a shield, might not be built around that shield at all. He might be better at, parrying attacks and turning their flanks against each other and, dealing damage. That might be his thing. And they're going to feel mechanically completely different, both from their feat choices as a dwarf, their backgrounds, their class feat choices, their skill choices, everything. They're just probably going to feel different from each other almost completely, other than a couple overlapping abilities. But they're going to be different, and that's what's cool about this. So you can play so many varieties of characters, whether they're wizards that are completely different from each other, clerics that play completely different than each other. That's what makes this so much fun to me. And just the core book alone, you can get years and years and years of gaming out of this. I've been playing another game system since it came out about 5 years ago, and while I love that game, I can say I'm starting to grow tired of it because I feel like I've played almost all of the concepts I wanted within the core rules and a couple of the other splat books. This book, I don't know if I'll ever feel that way. I feel like I could play this for 20 years and still feel like there's different options to explore. That's what's exciting about Pathfinder Second Edition to me. Now, there are some negative things. I can't go on enough about how good this system is and how I appreciate all the hard work that went into this. Some of the bad things about this are that the organization isn't the best. You find some actions that you can do under skills. You find some under downs, or like sometimes you're looking for, say, crafting, and you're going to find it in 2 different places, right? Whether it's in skills, downtime, in basically all that stuff is fine. But I feel like there's not a consistent direction with where to find specific things. And that's unfortunate because just going through here, it can be difficult because it is such a large book. It's already overwhelming for some who aren't familiar with it. And so I can see, you get a new player at the table for the first or second time, and if they're struggling to find stuff, it could put them off on the system. So hopefully they bear with it and figure it out and stick with it, because this is a great game, and I think this game is going to provide almost every type of gaming experience you're going to want, assuming you like a high fantasy type of experience. The equipment, you can craft your own magic items. The gold, the economy to it is it's very different from other games, which I really like how they've done it. There are some stuff I don't like. I like the subsystems in the Gamemastery guide for, improving social encounters and, exploration and things like that. I really like some of the stuff in the Gamemastery guide as it pertains to that. I think once, I get a mastery on how to run the game with those things, I don't foresee having a lot of issues moving forward, and I think it'll be a really smooth system to run as well as play, thanks to things like that. Overall, if I had to rate Pathfinder on a scale of crit fail to crit success, I'm going to put it at like an 18, 19 maybe. Right now on the surface, it looks like a great game. I'm really excited to explore the depths of what I can do with this system. Organization brings it down a little bit. I do still think some of the stuff like champions having to be a specific alignment, druids not being able to use, metal weapons and having to keep their druidic language a secret. Some of that stuff, I feel like you're being forced to do stuff that maybe you don't want to do in your games. And I know you can throw those rules out and play the game how you want. But I've always hated, like, even in older editions when they say, nope, you're a paladin, you're lawful good. And, I've never really liked that. I feel like that can it forces problems sometimes in parties that maybe you have a rogue assassin and now you have a lawful good paladin and button heads because of that. I like having a little bit of shades of gray. And so those are things I'm probably going to hand wave in my own games. But ultimately, again, it's a really good system. I highly recommend it to anybody who likes high fantasy. If you like customization, you like a lot of choices, you like meaningful choices, not just, oh, okay, I leveled up, bloop. Like, no, you actually have good, meaningful choices that are going to make your character unique. You can role play them out, which is amazing, the way some of these things are flavored in here in the write-ups. And so again, I highly recommend this if that sounds like a lot of fun for you. I know everybody I've talked to who's played this a little bit has said this is a great system. They love it. It's one of their favorites. So if you haven't checked it out yet, give it a shot. If you're looking to try it, join my Discord, where we are going to be looking for players for our own games. And there's already other people, such as my friend Lasagna Druid, who is looking for Pathfinder players. So get on over to the Discord and engage in the conversation about Pathfinder. This was Master the Game. I am Juice. Game on.